So the ATF's proposed rules on gun control have been leaked, and they are just as bad as you think they would be. So let's talk about this. But real quick before we jump into this video, if you think that the federal government needs to keep their hands off of our firearms, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. I also want to give a shout out to one of the sponsors of the channel, USCCA. Through your membership, you get training, education, and self-defense liability protection. So if you're in the market for something like that, if you carry a firearm, I highly recommend you look at USCCA, and I'll put a link to them down in the details section. So recently, Biden came out calling for additional gun control. Two of the things he said he would do through executive actions would be new regulation on 80% lowers, or so-called ghost guns, as well as pistol braces, stabilizing braces as well. Well, we recently got a leaked document which actually has the ATF's proposed rules, and this is all surrounding expanding the definition of what the ATF will consider various things to be, like expanded definitions on what firearms are, or firearms frames and receivers, expanding the definition of what they would consider to be silencer frames and receivers. Also, there's an expanded definition of what readily is for the purposes of determining when something is a firearm and when it is readily convertible into something that can expel a projectile. So let's go through some things that I pulled out that I think is very important and is very concerning when you look at this proposed rule. So you'll be seeing me looking off to the left here, and it's because I want to read directly from the document and some of the things that it's seeking to do. So at the very top of it, you have what it's alleging to do, and the leaked document and its working title is a definition of frame or receivers and identification of firearms. So what they have here in their quick summary is the Department of Justice proposes amending the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosive ATF regulations to provide new regulatory definitions of firearm frame or receivers and frame or receiver because the prior regulations failed to capture the full meaning of those terms. The department also proposes amending ATF's definitions of firearms and gunsmith to clarify the meaning of those terms and to provide definitions of terms such as complete weapon, complete muffler or silencer device, privately made firearm, and readily for the purposes of clarity given advancements in firearms technology. Further, the department proposes amendments to ATF's regulations on marking and record keeping that are necessary to implement these new or amended definitions. So that's the quick summary of what they're trying to do here. They're expanding definitions. They're saying right now definitions don't capture the advancement of technologies and also just don't capture currently what's going on. So we're going to expand a lot of these definitions and add so-called clarity to these various things. So first, one of the things that they are actually doing in the definition that they're trying to expand is the actual definition of what a firearm is. So here is the section where they talk about the definition or what they want the definition of firearm to be. It is under the GCEA and implementing regulations. The term firearm includes any weapon, including a starter gun, which will or is designed to or may readily be converted to expel a projectile by the action of an explosion. They then go on to say, although weapon parts kits in their unassembled, incomplete, and or unfinished state or configuration generally will not expel a projectile by the action of an explosion at the time of sale or distribution, weapons parts kits that are designed to or may readily be converted to expel a projectile by the action of an explosion are firearms under the GCA. So that is what they're trying to do. They are trying to expand the definition of what a firearm is to include these incomplete 80% lowers and kits to actually be firearms. This is again something we talked about very recently on this channel with some other proposed legislation that is actually being before the House. They are trying to bring these incomplete lower receivers, these 80% lowers and kits into the actual definition of what a firearm is. Again, expanding the definition. And by expanding this definition and bringing these kits and lower receivers, these 80%, within the definition of a firearm, that makes them subject to those various regulations as an actual firearm. Serialization, background checks, going through FFLs, things like that. And they actually say that in this proposed rule as well, that that is what they're going to do. It says manufacturers of such parts kits must be licensed, abide by the marking and record keeping requirements, and pay federal firearms exercise tax on their sales price, and any federal firearms licensee that sells such kits to unlicensed individuals would need to complete an ATF Form 4473, conduct a NICS background check, and abide by the record-keeping requirements applicable to full, completed, and assembled firearms. So again, because they're expanding the definition of firearms, bringing these kits in 80% lowers within that definition, it is going to make them subject to all these requirements that traditional firearms are as well. Now, beyond just expanding the definition of a firearm here in this proposed rule, one of the things they are saying they are also going to try to do is add clarity to what readily means in the whole sentence of readily convertible into something that can expel a projectile. So they say here that the new definition of readily, or the clarification on readily, will be a process that is fairly or reasonably efficient, quick, and easy, but not necessarily the most efficient, speedy, or easy process. So it's actually kind of interesting. They say that readily is something that's going to be quick, efficient, and easy, but not necessarily the most efficient or quick or speedy or easy process. It's almost contradictory, but that is what they're trying to do. They're trying to have a very broad definition of readily so that they can bring a lot of things into the definition of what a firearm is. Along with this, they also include a list of factors when determining when something is readily convertible. They say things like time, i.e. how long it takes to finish the process, ease, i.e. how difficult it is to do so, expertise, what knowledge and skills are required, equipment, what tools are required, availability, whether additional parts are required and how easily they can be obtained, expense, i.e. how much it costs, scope, i.e. the extent to which the subject of the process must be changed to finish it, and feasibility, i.e. whether the process would damage or destroy the subject of the process or cause it to malfunction. And then they go on to say kind of what I was telling you guys already, that defining the term readily is necessary to provide further clarity in determining when incomplete weapons or configurations of parts become a firearm regulated under the GCA and NFA. So based on this, if something doesn't take a whole lot of time to convert into a complete lower receiver, if it's fairly easy, if it doesn't take a whole lot of equipment, I assume. Also, if you don't need a whole lot of expertise, you can just follow step-by-step guides to complete the process. My assumption is, in their eyes, under this definition of readily, then that actual item would be a firearm. They also target 3D printed guns, or what they are calling privately made firearms. And they do this by adding a new definition to make privately made firearms to mean a firearm, including a frame or receiver, assembled or otherwise produced by a person other than a licensed manufacturer, and without a serial number or other identifying markings placed by a licensed manufacturer at the time the frame was produced. So for example, if you 3D printed a Glock frame, well, you don't have serial numbers or other markings on that. So they are considering those to be privately made firearms. And through this proposed rule, they are going to place various restrictions and requirements on those actually privately made firearms or 3D printed guns. This proposed rule will require FFLs to mark or supervise the marking of the same serial number on each frame or receiver of a weapon with the FFL's abbreviated license number. So the FFL is going to have to mark or watch you mark these 3D printed guns. So it appears that this proposed rule is saying that you are going to have to serialize even 3D printed guns, and you're gonna have to go to an FFL, they're gonna have to do it for you, or they're gonna have to watch you do it. Any of these items that are in the current possession of FFLs when this proposed rule is enacted, they have 60 days to actually serialize them, or if they sell them before the 60 days, they have to serialize them then at that point, whatever comes sooner. If an FFL goes and purchases one of these privately made firearms that doesn't have a serial number on it, after the enactment of this proposed rule, they then have 7 days to serialize it, or if they sell it quickly within that 7-day period or before that 7-day period, then they have to serialize it at that point. So really, again, whatever comes sooner. Another interesting thing that is added in here is that FFLs don't actually have to serialize the items for you. If you go to an FFL, they have the right to turn you away. So that's some nuance they add into this as well. Another thing they do in this proposed rule, which is interesting, is they expand out the record retention period for FFLs. Currently, FFLs have to retain records up to 20 years. Well, this is actually pretty much going to make it indefinite until the business is closed. So as long as the business is open, they have to retain their records. So again, like you can see in this video, there are a lot of things that they're going to try to do with this proposed rule. Now, with all this is a proposed rule. This is what the ATF is proposing. There's also going to be a commenting period where we can get out and let the ATF know that we do not agree with this proposed rule and that we are going to oppose this proposed rule. When this proposed rule actually hits and the commenting commenting period opens, I will definitely let you guys know. But right here, I want to let you guys know that we will need to get active and actually engage in that commenting period to shut this thing down. Please let anybody you know that supports the Second Amendment know about this proposed rule, especially when the commenting period opens. Let them know about it. Share this video, other videos that are talking about what the ATF is trying to do, because we need to shut these things down. So if you guys like this video and like support the channel, one of the best ways you can do that is to like, comment, subscribe, and make sure to hit that notification bell, because that helps the channel analytics, helps us spread the word about the Second Amendment, also spread the word about 280 infringements like this that are going on in the US. So as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.